Welcome to Kyle Anthony's UFC betting show. I am Kyle Anthony and welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the bet review show for UFC 235, Jon Jones versus Anthony Smith. We're going to talk about our best bet play that was for purchase on Wager Talk. We're also going to talk a couple free plays that we had and our overall feeling on this card. It was a fantastic card, living up to the excitement for UFC 235. I think there was some great fights there, great finishes, a couple great wars that happened, some good fights, entertainment-wise, that we had bet on. We're going to get into all of that, but I guess the first thing we're going to talk about is the best bet play. The best bet play was on Tyron Woodley to defeat Kamaru Usman, and Usman looked great, but I got to say one thing coming right out of the gate here. When I first breaking down these fights, you look at a lot of past fights, you look at the past things of what they've done, some trends, what they're good at, and I think for me, really the big thing was the wrestling was going to null each other out. I didn't think it was really going to happen where you're going to have both of these guys wrestling on the ground and turn into a wrestling match. Just one was basically the same as the other, and they really were just going to be able to kind of null each other out, and then it was going to be a striking match. That was my breakdown in this, taking a look at it, and by far, you're going to see that Woodley has that striking advantage. He's consistently able to power forward with his combinations a lot quicker. He has a lot more power. The combinations are good there. He doesn't really utilize as many leg kicks or anything like that, but he's really good because he's able to really push off and defend the wrestling and then work his striking up top. And that was something here that I thought would really kind of play out over the first few rounds of this fight. It would maybe Usman kind of early on in the fight, kind of working his wrestling a little bit, pushing him up against the cage. And that was the thing I was most worried about, was him being up against the cage. Of course, Woodley likes to, almost he likes to be walked down into having his back up against the cage, and then he explodes forward. But in this situation, I was hoping that was not going to be the case, because that's home for Usman. Usman wants you up against the cage. He wants to smother you. He wants to just keep you uptight. And I think the big, for me, talked to a couple of you guys on Twitter on Friday, and I didn't like the way that Woodley looked at the weigh-ins. Now, he's in shape, there's no doubt. It's not like he was out of shape, but he looked a lot softer in his body than compared to many other fights prior to that. And to me, right away, I did not like that. I stuck to my, what it was and how I felt about the play, but I just did not like that part of it. Usman looked in fantastic shape, and of course, this isn't a vanity contest, but I thought it was just the worst, which is saying a lot because Woodley is in great shape. But those past fights, even Till and other past moves that he had with Maia and everything, I thought he looked he looked huge. And here I just kind of think that he was actually the smaller guy going into this fight, and that was something to me that was really going to be a telling sign, how I felt about it. But when you take a look at the overall fight, Usman did the same thing that he was able to do to a lot of his other opponents. Push forward and just work his wrestling. He never needed to really outstrike or worry about Woodley outstriking him, because Woodley has literally the same exact strategy that he has for every fight. And that's something, as a world champion that Woodley is, and how good he is at fighting, and really the legacy that he has, it's worked. It's definitely worked. But even there was points where, okay, maybe that first round he's going to do his normal, I back up, explode forward. And after the 2 rounds of not being successful there, he just consistently allowed even more Usman to move forward. He backed up and Usman pinned him to the cage. And it was a point where right when that round would start, or maybe they'd have some separation, I'm saying Usman's got to work. Woodley's got to work. He's got to start throwing combinations. He's got to scare Usman in some capacity to not walk him down, not to feel comfortable walking Woodley down. Usman had nothing to worry about because there was no activity coming out of Woodley. There was just not enough combinations coming out of Woodley in the opening when they were at the right distance and there was some space between them. Never did Woodley look to really change up his game plan, or he just really was the same repeated thing over and over again. And even again, we're all watching it. I was with a bunch of people. We're all saying, when is he going to start throwing his combinations? And it was the same thing. Walk back to the cage, tried to work something there, wasn't able to do it. It was a great performance by Usman. I think that he did exactly what he needed to do to get the victory. So, I know there were boos and there was those kind of things for Usman, that it wasn't this highlight kind of fight, but Usman did enough that really to have the right game plan against Woodley. Push him up against the cage, knew he'd have those opportunities, and he'd be able to go out there and get that victory. So, tip my hat to Usman. I think it was a really bad performance for Woodley. I'm just, you know, he's 36 now, going on 37, and to see Woodley at this point, I thought that was a really big backstep for him in his career. I thought that he didn't look good in any part of that fight. There was never really a highlight fight. There was a highlight part. The only actually one was he had a glancing, you know, uppercut or hook, maybe in the 4th round. I think this was all that he really had. So it was really a one-sided performance for Usman. And yes, it wasn't one of those ones where it was, you know, he dropped Woodley or all these other things, but he had the right game plan. He got himself the victory. And I actually thought going into if Woodley was going to fight Covington, that I thought that Woodley would just shred apart Covington. Seeing this performance here changes that completely for me. I don't, you know, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Usman and Covington, if they're going to be the ones that are going to be fighting, which it sounds like that's going to be happening. But I thought that Woodley would, if they ever fought, he'd really, you know, just work his way right through Covington. And I'm not so sure. I just don't believe that Woodley is really where he was anymore. This is a big step down for him at this point. And you know, and again, he's not really very close with Dana White, so he's not going to be getting this rematch, and we'll see who he fights next. So there you have it. Usman does get the victory in the best bet play over Tyron Woodley, and we had a month of winners on our best bet play. We have been really crushing it here and dominating on our best bet play. To not hit this one never feels good, but this is why money management is important, and we move on to next week's card. We will have our best bet and our prediction show out Thursday for the coming card. And then the other one I want to talk about was Cody Garbrandt versus Pedro Munhoz. Now this fight here, I mean, let's file this away into the exact thing again as the same game plan that Cody has had that did not make him successful is what he did in this fight. I mean, you take a look at it. He did the TJ Dillashaw on this. He got emotional, and I don't even know how you really get emotional against Pedro. And I was saying that, you know, if Cody can just stay relaxed, if he just stays relaxed, he can work his speed, he can be able to work his cage movement. If you want to see everything that I was talking about this fight, check out the prediction show. I have it, you know, listed on my channel, but not to dive into it all over again. But that was really where I thought he'd be able to work his combinations from the outside. He had 100% takedown defense. Pedro was going to struggle. Pedro's output's a little less, you know, not very high, and you got somebody like Garbrandt who's got the speed, got the power. If he stays confident and stays relaxed, he could outwork Pedro for 3 rounds. And this fight here, I mean, you know, Pedro definitely was doing some good things out there, and he hurt, you know, Cody, and I said it, and you know, I said it that, you know, after Cody fought TJ that second time, you know, I was calling him Cody No Chin Garbrandt, because it's not Cody No Love, it's Cody No Chin, because, I mean, you just nick that chin and he is going down or he is rattled, and I'm very shocked to see the same thing happen with Pedro Munhoz is able to land a nice shot on him, and then even Cody was fighting back. Cody was, you know, they were back and forth, and it actually turned into a very competitive fight. It was kind of, you know, in the middle, and then it became they were really firing at each other, I mean, really all out. And that is the worst thing possible for Cody Garbrandt, because he really loads up those hooks. I mean, he loves to really load them up wide, and he throws them so wide, he's got a guy, which there is no way that Pedro has hand speed quicker than Cody Garbrandt. You know, no way. And Pedro was able to beat him to the punch multiple times in those big exchanges where Cody looks to throw these hooks that he's trying to knock your lights out, and he's hooking way too far out, and it's just Pedro, and he leaves his chin sitting there right on a pedestal for Pedro to do it. And even when he hurt Pedro, I was saying, and people were laughing, I was saying, back up. Like, Pedro's hurt, but back up. Work your way back in. Continually do what you're doing, and you'll get this victory. It was a close fight, but you'll get this victory if you can just stick to your game plan. He goes out there and has a firefight with Pedro Munhoz, stands toe-to-toe, gets dropped. I mean, I don't know where Cody Garbrandt goes at this point. I mean, he has lost 3 straight, 2 to TJ Dillashaw, which obviously is you know, TJ is definitely one of the best in the division, and obviously the champion, but one of the best in the division. And then you've got, you know, him losing another terribly kind of looking fight against Pedro Munhoz. Again, Pedro Munhoz 17-3, now 18-3. Not like he's any bum by any means, but this was a very winnable fight for for Cody. This was a very, very winnable fight stylistically, the way it was matched up. I feel like this was a spot where they were really trying to, you know, give Cody stylistically a nice opportunity. Not like this was some kind of walk in the park for him, but stylistically it was really going to work well for him. He did not get that victory. Cody Garbrandt and that chin, who knows who they are fighting next, because it will be very interesting to see. I mean, this guy was on the, you know, the high road. You know, he was knocking everybody out, looking great. You know, the way that he fought against Dominic Cruz, we have just not seen him fight like that at all anywhere. I mean, which is very, very odd that the things that work for Cody, really taking his time, although he, you know, he'd been knocking people out early, but just taking his time. Let the knockout come to him. When those opportunities are there and they present himself, that's where he looks to unload, not you know, getting dragged into a brawl. And that was exactly what Pedro even said in his interview. He said, we were hoping that if we clipped Cody a couple times, he was going to get emotional and he was going to look to start, you know, firing off big shots, and that's where he was prepared for the big wide shots that would allow Cody and his chin to be left out. So there you have it on that. The last one I want to talk about was the Ben Askren versus Robbie Lawler fight. I mean, this one here, the odds definitely were off in this fight. In my opinion, this was, you know, a very winnable fight for Lawler. I thought Ben Askren did what he needed to do to get that victory, but boy, was he in trouble. I mean, he was in trouble. He was taking some big shots. Looked like the fight was going to be over at one point, and then somehow you got Lawler's, got his head about to be choked out, and then was he choked out or was he not choked out? You know, you do see his arm go limp in that fight. You do see that, you know, it kind of went limp, but the fact that he bounces up so quickly, to me, he could have been, but it's very tough. And as a referee, I know that they were really blasting, I think it was Herb Dean, that he should not have stopped the fight. I think it was very right on the border. I mean, you know, Lawler had his moments there where he's really going to be able to put Ben away, and then you know, if your arm goes limp, that is a telling sign to the ref as a symbol of this is it, this is over, you can't have this, they got to protect the fighters, and that's the end of it. Now they're already talking about that Dana White wants to do this fight again, and Ben Askren is already saying, I don't want to do this fight again. Lawler wants to do this fight again. I think that since Dana White does not like Ben Askren, I think that they're going to make this fight again, and I think Ben realizes how tough that Lawler is. I mean, Lawler looked in fantastic shape. He was able to sprawl, get a couple of those, show his takedown defense. But Askren, I think, who looks very out of shape, but he's always looked like that, was able to really at least do what he needed to do to get the job done. It may not have been pretty. His face was completely battered by the end of that fight. It looked like Lawler was, fresh as a daisy there. But Ben Askren does get that victory. He's now 19-0. It'll be very interesting. Again, he's another guy. Who will they face him up against? If they do not do the Lawler fight, who will he face? So we'll see how all that goes. We will have the prediction show for Thursday out for the next event. And again, I appreciate everybody. We had some great conversations. This was not a winning night, but it was great conversations. We've had a killer month with winners, best bet plays, some of our side plays. Really done a great job. It just never feels good to come here on this show and give out and talk about the fact that we did lose this. I think that, and a lot of things, a lot of times I try to say to myself, what did I learn? If we didn't get this right here, I did not get this one right. What did I learn? And the big thing for me is I had Woodley at a much higher degree of where I think that he was compared to where he actually is. I think this is a big decline for him. And again, I really want to know your guys' opinions on that. What do you think that Woodley looked like? I thought he did not look good. Again, he's in shape. There's no question about that. But you go back two fights, he looked like a monster. And he just did not look like that guy going into the weigh-ins, and even the walking in the night of the fights. A couple of my other friends were saying kind of the same thing too. He looks a little off, looks a little soft. Let me know down in the description. Definitely like this video. Subscribe if you have not yet done so. We will have the bet review show. The prediction show out Thursday. And this is Kyle Anthony's UFC betting show, and I will see you on the next one.